Hello, 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 and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I'm your host, Nathan Hale. We are back here, back on schedule as always here. It's Wednesday, March 9th, or March 19th? May 19th? March 19th. March 19th, 2025. Always get the months mixed up. I mean, they're basically the same month, right? Well, do we have some stories for you? I mean, I can't believe it. We're saving it until the end, but the JFK files were released yesterday, I guess, later after I had recorded the show, so I didn't quite see them in time to do all that, but they were released. So we'll talk about those later. We have spending cuts happening to colleges based on transgender issues and stuff in the United States, and we have some updates on the Dow Jones. It's going to be a great episode. It's not quite as heavy of a day to cover, so I don't think we're going to be here for all that long, but we have all the hot news stories for you, and that piece of hair will not stay out of my face. Hey, we are live, so when hair falls out, that's what happens. It's been a day. It's been a day, right? So I guess let's not wait around any longer. I mean, I hope you all are doing so good today. I hope that is a beautiful day wherever you are. I got my Hawaiian shirt on. It's kind of a chilly day outside right now. It's like all like rainy and cold. It's like 50 degrees outside, and I was chilly, so I'm trying to warm up in my Hawaiian shirt. I got the heat on in the house, so let's get right into our first story of the day, which has to do with good old Lia Thomas. Lia Thomas always gives us such good things to talk about, so let's talk about him some more. All right, so this comes from the Daily Signal. Trump cuts millions from alma mater of trans swimmer Thomas. President Donald Trump has paused $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania for violating its executive order banning biological men from women's sports. Pennsylvania is the alma mater of William Lia Thomas, the biological male swimmer who competed against and tied with Riley Gaines in the NCAA Division I Women's Championship 3 years ago, Wednesday in 2022. 3 years ago today. Gosh, 3 years ago today, all of this got kicked off. Can't believe it. How time flies. Trump signed an executive order protecting women and girls' sports from male intrusion on February 5th, making good on a campaign promise. Thomas competed on the University of Pennsylvania's men's team for 3 years before identifying as female and joining the women's team. Trump's OCR sprung into action investigating violations of the president's directive. The OCR is investigating San Jose State University, the University of Pennsylvania, and the University of Maine, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, and others for reported violations of Title IX, the federal law that ensures equal opportunities for women and girls. Quite the story there. So, I think this is great. The only way you're going to kick people into action is taking money away. And we say, hey, you're going to get your funding cut from us if you're not following our directives. That's why you have to kick these people in order, right? This is common sense policy about not wanting biological men competing in women's sports. This was a very clear directive from the president. And yet here we are. We're having to backtrack on where we are at with all this simply because this one university does not want to follow a simple directive from the president to keep men out of women's sports. It's as simple as that, right? This doesn't seem like it should be that big of an issue, right? I mean, how crazy is it? If you have asked someone 10 years ago, hey, do you think men should be able to compete in women's sports? They would have said, hell no, absolutely not. But yet here we are today, having to force people using the power of money or lack thereof to get people to follow a simple directive to keep men out of women's sports. I mean, this is a win-win deal all around, and yet we're struggling to follow it. So shame on you for all of these universities, especially, what was it, the University of Pennsylvania. Shame on you, University of Pennsylvania, for allowing this to go on as long as you allowed it to. And shame on you, all these other universities right here, University of Maine, Massachusetts, and others, all of you. Shame on all of you for allowing this to happen, right? If you really are so progressive, if you are really so for allowing all these opportunities for trans athletes, create a trans athlete league. Where's the NCAA making the trans athlete league, right? We have women's sports. Nobody watches women's sports anyways, to be completely honest with you all. I mean, no shame on the women's sports, but I mean, the viewership is just not there. You can look at the numbers. It's not my opinion. I'm just saying the truth here, right? Create a whole new sports league. I think that a trans sports league actually would be a big hit, because I would totally watch that, right? Just allow a sports league for anyone to be in it, who wants to shoot themselves up with hormones or do whatever they want to their body, right? Are you telling me that you would not watch trans wrestling? I would totally watch trans wrestling. I would totally watch a woman who's now a man take on a man who's now a woman. Are you kidding me? That sounds amazing. I would totally watch all that, but I digress. Create a whole new sports league, put them in it, keep them out of the women's sports. Women should play them by themselves. Men should play them by themselves. End of story. Create a whole new league. That's my opinion on it. Let's move on. Judge blocks Trump's ban on transgenders in military. Another trans story we got today. So this comes from the Daily Wire. On Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not. Nominated to her post by former President Biden, issued a preliminary injunction to block the Trump administration from banning transgender troops from serving in the U.S. military. Here's a picture of her. I assume that's what she looked like just based on all this, right? She's got this bob thing going on here and like those weird like round glasses that all libs wear, right? U.S. District Judge Ann Reyes, who in the past worked to defeat Californian Proposal 209, which wanted to ban state government institutions from considering race, sex, or ethnicity regarding employment, claimed in her 79-page opinion that military leaders were quote, responsible for integrating transgender persons into open military service, and asserted that recruiting, unit cohesion, and military readiness had improved since 2021. On January 27th, President Trump issued Executive Order 14,183, which revoked Biden's Executive Order 14,004, which permitted transgenders to serve openly in the military. Quote, consistent with the military mission and longstanding DoD policy, expressing a false gender identity divergent from an individual's sex cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service. The order continued. Beyond the hormonal and surgical medical interventions involved, adopting of a gender identity inconsistent with an individual's sex conflicts with a soldier's commitment to an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life. A man's assertion that he is a woman and his requirement that others honor this falsehood is not consistent with the humility and selflessness required by a service member. On February 26, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a memo whose policy stated, quote, military service by service members and applicants for military service who have a current diagnosis or history of or exhibit symptoms consistent with gender dysphoria is incompatible with military service. I mean, we're seeing these radical judges going haywire on matters like this. I mean, we just saw a judge block another Trump order, and this leads me to my first point I want to say on the story. Is Trump not the commander-in-chief of the military? Is he not the commander-in-chief, right? Is he not like the head of the military, right? Is it not his job to direct the military to do whatever he sees fit? He is the commander-in-chief after all, unless I'm wrong for whatever reason, but I think I read the US Constitution at least a few times, and it does say that in there, right? So I don't see what the issue is with orders like this, right? He's the commander-in-chief. He deserves to be able to choose who is allowed to be in the military and who's not. And people who have mental disorders are not permitted to be in the military. Now, I've heard many arguments from people saying, hey, there are plenty of transgender individuals who have done great military work. That's fantastic. But you know what? In the experience that I've seen, and what I think many other people can say, is that if you're trans, if you're questioning your identity like that, if you're considering shooting yourself with hormones or cutting off parts of your body, that sounds like mental illness to me, right? That does not sound like something or someone that I want fighting on the front lines to defend our country. If you can't even figure out who you are as an individual, how do we know you're going to be fit to fight when the time comes to do so, right? And maybe blocking transgender people entirely out of the military is not the right move, right? There are plenty of other spots in government where someone who has a mental illness is perfectly apt to serve, right? There are plenty of office jobs in the United States government. If you really want to serve your country in that way, go do one of those, right? And I've heard many people make the claim that, hey, banning transgenders in the military is just like banning gays from serving in the military, right? The don't ask, don't tell policy. But the difference there is that when you're gay, you're not questioning who you are, who your identity is, right? That you have a sexual orientation, not a gender identity, right? I'm still a dude, right? I'm not questioning, right, what my sex is, right? I don't have a mental illness that is causing me to be attracted to the same sex, right? That's not what that is. That's been proven through science, right? We don't have conclusive evidence, though, that gender dysphoria, right, does not get in the way of someone's normal behaviors, especially when it comes to high stress situations, defending your country, right? And all that aside, he's the commander in chief, right? He should get to determine what is right for the U.S. military. It's his job to direct them. By proxy, it's also Pete Hegseth's job to direct them, right? They both together have the right to determine what is right for the U.S. military and what is not, right? This, I don't think, is an unreasonable ask by the military to do this. So shame on this judge, and shame on all the judges who are standing in Trump's way of following simple directives, right? We've seen judges who are standing in his way of the deportation deal, right? You're literally standing in the way of sending criminals out of the United States, right? Why are we standing in the way of this? Why are these judges doing this? I've seen rumors online that there is a bigger picture here, that these judges are working together to stop a lot of these different orders. And I kind of believe it, to be honest with you all. I kind of do. I don't have any evidence to say that they're not. So I would not be surprised. My question, though, is what are we going to do moving forward? Because we still got 4 years ahead of us, right? We're only 2 months in. What are we going to do moving forward to make sure that every Trump directive that is the least bit controversial is not just shot down by the court, right? If this keeps happening over and over and over again, we're going to be sitting in courtrooms for the next 4 years and nothing's going to get done, right? There's been a lot that's been done already, and a lot of it is being stamped on by judges who are trying to stand in the way of the administration. How are we going to get around this going in the future? So I've heard rumors of bringing judges forward and impeaching them and everything. I don't know if that's necessarily the right move, but it might be the only choice in the matter that we have to get around a lot of these radical judges who are standing in the way of the president following simple policy directives, right? And directing his departments to do the right things, right? All right. So that's all I got to say about that one. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story. So this comes from the New York Post. The Dow Jones jumps nearly 400 points after Fed signals rate cuts still on the table. Stocks rallied on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve kept rates unchanged as widely expected, and the central bank and investors continued to gauge how President Trump's tariff policies affected the economy and inflation. Stocks extended gains further as Fed Chair Jerome Powell spoke, saying it was too early to determine whether to look through the impact U.S. tariffs would have on inflation, and difficult to assess how much of any price increases are attributable to the levies. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped 600 points before closing up 383.32 points, or 0.9% at 14,964. The S&P 500 gained 1.1%, and the NASDAQ climbed 243 points, or 1.1%. The central bank kept its benchmark overnight interest rate unchanged in the 4.25 to 4.5 range. It indicated that the 2/4 point interest rate cuts were likely later this year, the same mediation forecast as 3 months ago. The Fed also forecasted slower economic growth and higher inflation. Not good. Quote, given the worries around tariffs and how they could affect U.S. growth and inflation, Matthias Schreiber, head of the multi-asset solutions team at Allspring Global Investments in London, said the Fed, quote, took a widely expected wait-and-see approach on rates. Schreiber added, quote, for 2025, the interest rate market currently expects that the Fed will cut rates to around 3.75% by year end. A lot will depend on how the inflation versus growth trade on developers. Growth may continue weakening, and the Fed may need to cut rates more forcefully than expected. So this kind of is a reoccurring point I feel like I keep coming at, and I'm conflicted when I see stories like this. But on the one hand, I feel like I'm restating the same points. But on the other hand, this is what's currently affecting the United States, and I'm trying to find stories here to cover that are currently affecting Americans, especially people like myself. Right? Many Americans, including myself, voted for Donald Trump to bring back a Trump economy. Right? To create a strong economy, to lower interest rates, to make it affordable for people in my generation to buy homes. The issue that I think many of us are feeling is that we don't have a plan in place right now to know how are we going to execute that, right? Where is the Trump administration's plan on how are we going to bring about lowering interest rates? How are we actually going to do this? The only explanation we've gotten is, hey, we're going to tariff all these other countries. But all the tariffs seem to be doing right now is actually affecting Americans, not really benefiting us all that much, at least from what I've noticed, right? We've had some industry talking about moving into the country. We've had some changes happening between countries. I mean, I feel like the tariffs got us some things that we wanted. For instance, we had Mexico working more closely with us to regulate the border. We've had some change happening and moving industry into the country in certain fields, but that hasn't really been reflected in the stock market. I was watching Trump speaking live the other day, and I was watching the stock market live on television at the same time, and you can see as Trump talks about the tariffs, the market rates slowly go down as soon as he starts talking about the tariffs, right? So I'm not faulting the dude. I'm sure that there is a plan behind the scenes in place for that. I just like to know what that is. And until I know what our end goal is and what we're trying to achieve out of tariffing all these countries, I don't really see how that's being reflected in our actual economy and how us as Americans are benefiting from such tariffs and how we're going to get to the point where we want to be at, right? Let us remind us, we had a 2% inflation rate pre-COVID during the Trump economy. This is the economy that we want to go back to. We want to go back to those pre-COVID numbers, 2% or lower, right? During that time. That was a great time to buy a home, right? We had great inflation. We had great inflation rates, great interest rates. It was not terrible, right? That's where we want to go back to. And until we start seeing those rates gradually going down, I'm on the offense, right? I'm feeling a little upset about it. I'll be honest with you all. So, I mean, I'm looking at this from the perspective as someone who has never owned a home before, and I'm looking to own a home in probably the next 5 years or so. That's where I'd like to be in the next 5 years is owning a home at some point. And based on the current rates, it's not looking good for people like me, right? It might be a different story, if you own a home already, right? You might feel more comfortable and everything, but I've never owned a home before, right? I want those rates to be lower for people like me. So I'm interested to see where this goes. I'm giving the guy a chance, right? We'll reassess like a year from now, right? Next year, we'll see where we are, 2026. Give the guy a year. We'll see where we are then with the economy and everything to really start making our decisions. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again. If Republicans do not start to deliver on some of these points, such as lowering government spending, getting the cost of goods down, getting inflation rates and interest rates down, they're going to get hammered in the midterms, man. They only have a few seat majority in Congress right now. And if they don't start delivering some of these major points that people voted on, these points that are affecting day-to-day Americans, they are going to get hammered in 2026. They need to start working on this, and I hope they are behind the scenes so that by the time those midterms roll around and a lot of these guys start campaigning, they have something to campaign on, because that's the thing that's going for us. If we can keep a majority in Congress for the next 4 years, right, that'll be a big deal to get a lot of these Trump policies through and to make sure that we can keep America great and bring us back to where we need to be at. So I'll say it before I say it again. Public's going to get hammered unless we can deliver on these things. Things like the transgender issues, right, in the military and everything. Those are all great, right? Happy to have that in our country. But it doesn't affect day-to-day Americans, right? Day-to-day Americans do not get impacted on if there's transgender in the military, right? If there are men and women's sports, right? They're big issues, don't get me wrong, and I stand by the decisions that the administration has made. But they're not ones that impact me every single day, right? They're not ones that probably most likely impact you every single day unless you have to work in those fields, right? If you're working in the military, maybe. If you're a college athlete, maybe. But if you're a working day American, right, you're not being impacted by those. They need to be delivering on these issues that everyday Americans are delivering on, or also they're going to hammer in the midterms. That's all I have to say about this one. Let's move on to our last story. Let's talk about JFK. Now, this is fantastic. This is exactly what I wanted from the Trump administration. I'm glad that we're finally getting it. This comes from Fox News. Thousands of pages of new JFK assassination files released, fulfilling Trump's promise, new era. 80,000 pages of previously unseen files related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy were released Tuesday after President Trump made the long-awaited announcement just 1 day earlier. Quote, "So people have been waiting for decades for this, and I've instructed my people, lots of different people, National Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, that they must be released tomorrow," Trump said during a visit to the Kennedy Center in Washington. As of Tuesday night, over 1,123 unredacted documents totaling roughly 80,000 pages are visible on the National Archives website. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard commended Trump's move in an X post on Tuesday, writing that the president, quote, "is ushering in a new era of maximum transparency." Quote, "Today, per his direction, previously redacted JFK assassination files are being released to the public with no redactions," Gabbard wrote. Quote, "Promises made, promises kept." Back in January, Trump signed an executive order to declassify all the assassinations of JFK, his brother RFK, and the civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. The order requested that the Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General submit a proposal plan for the JFK files release by February 7th. This is great. This is great. This is exactly one of the things I think a lot of people also voted for Trump for, is doing things like this. We as Americans, it's been long enough. We deserve to know what was in these files, right? I'm going to read to you some of the takeaways that were gained from seeing these files. But we as Americans deserve to see what was in these files, what is happening in them, and what they contain. We've had nothing but speculation for decades based upon what is potentially in a lot of these files and what was redacted inside of them. So I hope that puts a lot of people at ease as to what actually happened to JFK. We haven't seen what happened to MLK. I think that MLK is probably the bigger conspiracy happening than necessarily JFK is. And I still feel, there's no amount of documents I feel it could be released that would put certain people's minds at rest just because of the potential corruption that was taking place at the time, which I'm sure was covered up in one way or another so that this would never happen, so that even if all these documents were released, we wouldn't know what truly happened. But I hope that this puts a lot of people's minds at rest, and at least now we know that as far as what is on record from the government, what they know is at least released. And possibly, it's not like they're hiding secrets from us anymore in relation to stuff like this, right? It's all out there from what they know. We know it as well now. So I at least I hope so. I could be totally wrong. But let's read what was in some of these files. So I found this CBS or this ABC News article about JFK files and some of the key takeaways. So most of what the government released tonight is not new. In fact, much of what has attracted attention on social media and in news reports has long been in the public domain, except for minor redactions such as the blacking out personal identifying information of CIA sources or employees, including names and addresses, which have now been disclosed. Tuesday's initial release contained 1,123 records comprising 32,000 pages. A subsequent release on Tuesday night contained 1,059 records comprising 31,400 additional pages and key takeaways from the newly released files. Surveillance. Several of the newly released pages detail how the CIA went about tapping telephones in Mexico City between in December of 1962 and January 1963 to monitor the communications of the Soviets and Cubans at their diplomatic facilities, which Kennedy assassin Lee Harvey Oswald visited in the months before the assassination. The previously redacted pages spell out specific instructions for CIA operatives on how to wiretap, including to use the use of certain chemicals to create markings on telephone devices that could only be seen by other spies under UV light. Another newly disclosed portion details CIA surveillance of Soviet embassies of Mexico City and efforts to recruit double agents from Soviet agency personnel and reveal the names and positions of those who were recruited. The CIA officials writing these memos tout the efficiency of their efforts, with one trumpeting, quote, "I cannot help but feel that we are buying a great deal of our money in this project." The memo also details the CIA's surveillance of the American man described as a communist living in Mexico. The bulk of the memo is a listing of phone numbers that were tapped by the US government. This file has long been sought by researchers due to Oswald's visits to the Soviet and Cuban embassies in Mexico City, but the document included no mention of Oswald by name. Cuba and Castro. The material shed new light on the U.S. covert activities in Cuba targeting revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. Unredacted text of the June 1961 memo on the CIA sent to Kennedy by Arid Arthur Salinger Jr. contained harsh criticism of the spy agency just months after its backing of the ill-fated Bay of Pigs invasion. Some of the other documents also detail operations to potentially overthrow Castro. One 1964 document showed that two intelligence assets discussed potentially assassinating Castro under the administration of President Lyndon Johnson. Another potentially released document detailed RFK being briefed on potential plans to kill Castro. RFK Jr., quote, RFK Jr. asked, or sorry, quote, RFK as I'm so used to saying the junior, quote, RFK asked to be told before the CIA works on the mafia again. A footnote on the document read. CIA foreign footprint. Salinger also argued to Kennedy that the CIA's reliance on, quote, controlled American sources, unquote, had been encroaching on the traditional functions of the State Department, and that the CIA may have been seeking to infiltrate the policies of American allies. At the U.S. Embassy in Paris, for example, Salinger wrote that the CIA has even sought to monopolize contact with certain French political personalities, among them the President of the National Assembly. RFK killing. The release included 77 documents regarding RFK, with most of the documents relating to his activities as Attorney General and Senator totaling 2,500 pages. Of those, only 2 directly mentioned his assassination in 1968. An intelligence document from 1968, previously released in 2018, discussed how RFK's assassinations stoked interest in his brother's assassination and the New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison's investigation into the matter. Quote, the forthcoming trial of Sirhan, accused of the murder of Senator Kennedy, can be expected to cause a new wave of criticism and suspicion against the United States, claiming once more the existence of a sinister political murder conspiracy, the dispatch read. All right, so this is one group of files down. So we're still missing the Epstein files and the MLK files. We'll be sure to update you as soon as those come out as well. I can't wait to see what's inside those. But regardless of what we learned from these files, I still stand by what I said of, hey, at least we're seeing that the government is trying to be a little bit more transparent with us and actually releasing information that we deserve and are entitled to know about from this assassination attempt. We deserve to know this information. Why is this being hidden from us, right? I'm not a fan of the government hiding information from us unless they actually say the reason why we can't see it, right? What's the actual reason, right? What's the reason why this hasn't been released, years and years and years ago? That's kind of what I want to know, because it seems like, hey, we released all of this yesterday. Why wasn't it released 10 years ago? Why wasn't it released 20 years ago, right? Why did it take until Trump came around to release information like this to the public? So that's all I really have to say about that. Go and read the JFK files for yourself. See what you see inside of them. It's been interesting to see some new things that have come to light. Nothing too groundbreaking, seems like, in my opinion. But we'll be sure to keep you updated if anything else should happen. But that is the end of today's episode. I hope to see you all back here again on Monday. We will have another great show. I will actually be out of town on Monday, so I'll have a new backdrop behind me for the next 2 episodes. But we'll see you back here on Monday. Please share this channel with your friends, right? Tell people how great this show is, right? Tell people how great of a job that I'm doing. Share this with people online. Watch here on X, on Rumble, on YouTube, on Instagram, on all the platforms. We're on TikTok too. Give me a follow over there. We're trying to get more TikToks up. But yeah, all great things that are happening. The more viewership, the better, right? I love doing this show for you all, and I hope that you all enjoy watching it. And I hope that we start to get a lot more viewers watching this show, right? We're a growing community. Every single episode that comes out, we have a few more viewers watching the show on all of our platforms. And yeah, if you came in late, go and watch the show back again. It'll be uploaded on my X as soon as the stream ends, but you can go watch it on YouTube as well. Also on Rumble, it'll all be on there. The only place that doesn't save this is Instagram. If you're watching on Instagram, please come on one of the other platforms. If you're not following me already on X, follow me on X at Homonatian. That's where all of the updates for the show are. That's where all the updates about me are. I'm constantly tweeting all throughout the day. So if you want to hear more about me, if you want to hear more about my opinions and thoughts, there are many things that I talk about on X that don't make it onto the show just because I've already talked about them. I don't feel like repeating myself necessarily. So please go and follow me on there. But until next time, I have been Nathan Hale. This is Spin Cycle Live. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Have a good one. Peace out.